arrested, admitted they were jailbroke fire sticks. That's your clue. He also jailbreaks his own fire sticks, and he shows you how to load and do this over the internet. He's the only one with a criminal history. He's been in trouble for battery, criminal traffic, providing false name to a law enforcement officer. He's had warrants out of I believe Orange County, Orlando. He charged $80 for his fire stick.
A lot of people have heard about old Grady Judd down there in Florida. You always see this dude on the news, always going after people. Well, we got one of the guys on today that he went after, and it was really a nonsense case. But you know what? Lewis can tell you more about what happened with him down there in Florida and how he got manhandled by the cops, in the court system. But we'll get into that. Lewis, tell the people who you are, where you're from. Let's talk about you and what your life was like.
Yeah. First of all, let me just say thank you for, reaching out to me, getting me on the show. I really appreciate that. And also, I really commend your work that you've done with the prison reform stuff and with the freedom fighter stuff. It's really great. My name is Luis Vasquez. I'm from Florida, originally from Puerto Rico, was born in Puerto Rico, lived there until the age of 5 when my parents went their separate ways and we moved out here to Florida, to Orlando, to be exact. So I've been down here pretty much my entire life. I moved to Polk County in 2017, so that was probably 6 or 7 years ago now. And I've been here living a normal life until about 2020. And
until about 2020. Let me ask you this. What was your life like growing up, though?
So, my family's very, very small. So it's me, my mom, and my sister. When we left Puerto Rico, my dad stayed there. We came here to the United States. So it was kind of learning English, learning the culture. It's not that different than Puerto Rico, but it is a different language. So it was kind of rough at first, the poverty, for many years. But my mom busted her ass, man. I mean, she was working 2 jobs right from the beginning. She was a teacher in Puerto Rico. When she got here, she had to restart from a cleaning lady in the hotel, working at a flea market on the weekends, just hustling like crazy. So it didn't take that many years for her to get us in a better situation and, kind of out of the hood. But most of our life was apartment to apartment, right? So a couple years here in this apartment complex, they raised the rent. We go to another city, Orlando, Kissimmee, just around Central Florida. So there's a lot of moving. End up going to 6 different schools, 2 different elementaries, 2 middle school, 2 high school. So it was just, we didn't really have a home base. I don't really have a hometown, so we just kind of moved around a lot. But other than that, it was great. My mom's super loving lady. So, it was a very loving household, just very small.
What about your father? Was your father present, or was it a single mother household?
Single mother household. My dad, he stayed in Puerto Rico once they went their separate ways. But, we saw him every summer for probably the first several years. We fly to Puerto Rico. They sent us on a plane, us 2 kids, spend there the summer in Puerto Rico and come back to Florida. So other than that, the relationship was more, on the phone. We talk on the phone a lot and that kind of thing. So, but there's a lot of distance between Florida and Puerto Rico. It's 1,000+ miles. So it's kind of tough to build that bond and all that. But other than that, I mean, he was a great dude. He's passed now, but he was a good dude, very good dude. Sorry
to hear that. So, you start hustling, right? I mean, I know you're selling these fire sticks and all this stuff stems from that. But how do you kind of get into the, I'm about to go out here and hustle?
So that was kind of bred in me. That was bred in me from my mom. I mean, like I said, she was a hardcore hustler. Like she was constantly working, constantly on the come up, constantly bringing us along with her. So it wasn't just that she talked it. I saw it in her actions, right? So that was bred in me from the beginning. And she was also not a drill sergeant or nothing like that, but she was, she drilled it in your head that, listen, you're not here to live the easy street in the United States, right? You're not a victim that's going to live off the government, this kind of thing. You got to get out there and work. You have to make things happen for yourself. You got to be self-sufficient. So, I mean, she drilled that into me and my younger sister's head. And it was just natural, man. It was just so many years of seeing that when I hit the streets, as far as working, as far as hustling on the side, not selling nothing crazy, just moving and shaking. That was natural. It was easy.
So you're moving and shaking. Are you thinking like, hey, man, I'm going to get these fire sticks and I'm going to be a millionaire someday. I'm going to make it off the fire stick.
Definitely not. No, definitely not. I don't think anybody's ever really said that as far as flea market vendors. Now, if you're some kind of big heavyweight, overseas shipping to China 3,000 fire sticks at a time, maybe there's some kind of business in that. But as far as like, hey, I want to go to the flea market and, sell something, it's a reality that doesn't exist as far as getting rich quick at a flea market. You know what I'm saying? You're just kind of there to pay an extra bill, pay the light bill, pay this, pay that, but it maybe eventually stack up some bread. But yeah, the get rich quick thing wasn't really part of the equation.
So, you're working at the flea market. Are you selling more than fire sticks? I mean, what do you got going on?
Yeah, so I was selling when I first came into the flea market. I was actually selling these little computers. They're the size of a credit card, and they're called Raspberry Pis. And they were made specifically for low-income people to have access to computers. If you can't have a huge PC that's multiple hundreds of dollars, these little Raspberry Pis are $35. They were made for us, right? But it wasn't getting to the people, at least not in Florida. So I brought those to the flea market, and I was teaching people how to connect them to your mouse or whatever, and you have a computer for your kids, for you, or whatever. So I was doing that for the first month or so in the flea market. It was very, very slow, and eventually I got so many requests to help people with their fire sticks. Like they would come and show up with a fire stick. Hey, Lewis, the lady that was here before for so many years, she used to fix this and get me free channels on, local news, sports, blah, 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 etc. I would tell them, well, she's not here anymore. I got Raspberry Pis. I don't know what to tell you. Although I knew how to do that, right? I mean, because we didn't have computers when I was growing up really like that. We just couldn't afford to do it. But as I was able to make my own money at 15, that kind of thing, I was able to buy a computer and buy a laptop and kind of teach myself stuff like that. So eventually I just got tired of so many people coming up and asking about the fire sticks that I said, I just switched exclusively to buying Amazon fire sticks from Amazon or from the distributors, Target, Best Buy, whatever, and selling them at the flea market, reselling them at the flea market.
So what are you buying the fire sticks for? Because this is like a big investigation to bust you, right?
Yeah, 3 months.
3-month investigation over fire sticks.
Yeah, it was 3 months long. As far as and my discovery documentation, the investigation. So that first month when I was selling the computers, after that first month, as soon as I switched over to fire sticks, maybe a week after, that's when the first undercover police came into the flea market, ready to go with the cameras, the microphones, and obviously unbeknownst to me or the other 3 people that got arrested. But it was quick, so it was 3 months long. They did 3 buys, just like, you flip Coke or whatever, you're selling some kind of weed, this kind of thing. They're going to do a buy and bust. Well, it was like a buy and bust operation type of thing.
Let me ask you about Grady. So like he's locked in on you. Grady's on your ass kind of, right? They're bringing cameras down there, microphones, undercover purchases. You must have been making some really big money on these fire sticks, right?
So no, what I was making was peanuts. It was peanuts, man. So, when I went into the flea market, like I said, it wasn't to get rich quick. It was more to pay. And it was during COVID. And Florida didn't shut down. Florida was, maybe for a couple of days, and it was right back to work. I had 2 days off. It was right back to work, and the bills didn't stop. There was no forbearance for, electricity, rent, mortgage, whatever. So I was out there to pay a couple more bills, and I was buying the Amazon 4K fire sticks, and they were $50 at the time. I was buying them from Amazon, maybe 3 or 4 at a time, taking them to the flea market, opening them and making them as good and fast as possible for people, and then selling them for like $80. So maybe $30 profit, $25 profit, something like that. So it was chump change, man. It was peanuts. That operation was based on. I don't know what the other people necessarily were making, but it didn't sound like a lot. I saw the press conference. So it was peanuts, man.
So this cat wastes all this time, all this money, and you're only making $30. They act like you were really hurting Spectrum, right?
Yeah. So what ended up, I don't know where they got what information maybe they got where we were making millions or thousands or whatever. it was, or maybe they never thought that, right? But for some reason, they felt it was necessary to start an operation into this flea market for people that are making peanuts off of something. And I'll get into this a little bit later, but something that, I'm sorry, is not illegal. The charge that they hit us with does not match. But anyways, yeah, for like what you just said right now, Spectrum, that actually played a role into it too. When I got arrested and I got my discovery later, as it turned out, Spectrum Charter Communications, the second largest cable provider in the nation, actually was involved in this case. They had a guy, I don't want to say his name, but he's in the discovery. He actually came out and gave a recorded sworn statement, that, hey, a super vague statement at that. And let me paraphrase what the statement was. I guess they asked him, hey, are fire sticks, jailbroken fire sticks illegal? And my paraphrase of his statement was, well, I mean, typically people need to have an agreement with a cable communications conglomerate to blah, 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 to sell things or whatever, to have cable channels on a device. Super vague, but that's what that statement is what got, everything finalized, because that statement came way later, way after the initial investigation started. So, but yeah, Spectrum was definitely involved in this thing, man. Their guy was there, and it said Spectrum Charter Communications director of whatever. He was that. They were they wanted a piece too, man. So I don't know. Maybe they saw me driving a Lambo that I never knew I had.
So let me ask you this. You got this operation going for about 3 months. How much money profit do you make over this 3 months that they're investigating you selling fire sticks?
If I had to estimate how much money before we got ran down on, how much money profit I brought in, a couple hundred, maybe $300-400, something like that. And that was for the service of, how do I say it? Sort of upgrading the fire stick, which is wrongly termed as jailbreaking. But yeah, upgrading the fire stick. So it was a $30 markup. And people knew what it was. They came, they brought me their sticks sometimes. I bring my own, they bring theirs. So it was very, very minimal profit from the whole venture,
So Grady's wasting taxpayer dollars to come get you over making a couple $100 in 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely see it that way. You could definitely see it that way. And in my opinion, yes, that it was a waste of taxpayer money. I don't get it. I don't know. I mean, there's definitely crime. Polk County's big, man. Polk County's big. I think it's one of maybe the biggest county in Florida. So we got crime just like everywhere else. It is Florida. Wild shit happens. People are, doing all type of wild shit 24/7 out here. So I don't know. Maybe it was slow. But that's something maybe he would have to answer.
Well, you know what? I mean, you see him all the time in these, news clips, and he's usually going after gangbangers and hardcore dudes and killers, and then here he wants to come bust the flea market.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? And he actually does a great job as far as going after, bad guys or whatever. Right. So like when I moved to Polk County, and I've known about Grady Judd since I was a kid, because I grew up in Orange County, which is Orlando, close to Polk. But you've seen, everybody that lives here has seen the conferences. They're very often, I don't know if it's monthly, weekly, or whatever, but usually it's murder, a rapist type dude, a guy messing with kids, some kind of fuckery, right? And that's the people that he puts, or the office puts on this press conference and goes, they take a picture. It's John Smith, this guy right here tried to kidnap a kid. Here's his picture. Here's his name, for permanent YouTube, memorialism or whatever, right? Because it's permanent. Those press conferences are permanent. They go on social media. So, that made sense to me. I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, I got 2 little kids, 2 little boys. If something was to happen to them, I wouldn't need the police, right? So, I mean, that made sense to me. But something changed, I don't know, in 2020 or whatever, but something changed with this case. And but basically what I'm saying is, I prefaced my statement with, I respect Grady Judd, especially all the work he's done. He's been there 40 years. I think it was his first job ever. He's been the sheriff for 20. He runs unopposed for the last several years. So he's done a great job. I mean, I used to love him before that. Obviously now I don't, because of what happened to me, and not just me, but the 3 old people. But that I just wanted to preface the statement with that.
I mean, everybody, I'm in New York. I know who that dude is. You know what I mean? Like, I see him. Sometimes I laugh. Some of the stuff he says, I'm like, wow, okay, that was outrageous. But he's like, we got this scumbag right here off the street. We put holes in him. I mean, the dude says some really wild shit. But I mean, hey, hardcore conservative, I would say. But now you said you used to like him, but now you hate him. What's the real reason why you really dislike this guy?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I necessarily hate him or anything like that. I mean, I just completely disagree with him on this specific thing. And obviously it was involving me, but it's not just that. Like I'm very uncomfortable with what took place, and I let it go. I mean, this has been 4 years now since this thing happened. I did what they wanted me to do. They did what we came with our little deal or whatever. And I try to move on. The problem that I have, the biggest problem I have with this whole thing and what took place is that it's permanent. It's permanently on social media for the history of lifetime, right? Until the internet goes down, until Bitcoin crashes. So if this was such a big deal, right? Let's say you go to the flea market and you're selling cocaine or whatever, right? You get arrested, you fight your case as a private citizen. Right, you're not going to be on the news. You're not going to be there's not going to be a 15-minute press conference and another 30-minute video, news everywhere going on. It's not going to happen. You're going to fight as a private citizen. So the anger that I have for what took place and the betrayal, which is really it's betrayal. It's not even anger of what took place, is the fact that this is a permanent display of what I see as a violation of two amendments: the Fourth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. I mean, the right to have a fair trial and the right to have, a trial without people having seen a conference or a news about them saying, hey, this guy 10 years ago, he also did this, he also did that, he did this, he's a casual thief, he's a, what was the other one? Well, tech pirate, I don't think he didn't say that, but it was along those lines. I took that and I reclaimed that narrative, by the way. But these other terms and just lambasting and just talking, just shit that those are called prejudice. And I'm sure because I'm sure way more about the law than I do. But those are prejudicial statements. You're not supposed to do that after you get arrested. You're supposed to be able to fight your case, and that's why I say I feel it was constitutional violation on multiple ends. But I didn't know that back then. I didn't know that 4 years ago. I didn't know that until I started writing my book and reading into the Constitution and what we're born with, right? Because we're born with those rights. I didn't know that until now. So when I wrote my book, I actually got more and more, that feeling of betrayal, because the more I discover, it's wild, man. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Let me ask you this. After you get arrested, I mean, do you see him in person at all? Does he talk to you? Like, hey, is he doing the investigation?
No, I don't. Not a lot of people see Grady Judd, unless I'm sure it's the higher ups or whatnot. But I've never seen him in person. I know he does go out there and does events for the community and stuff like that. I just haven't maybe been to any of them that he's been at. I haven't seen him in person, and I'm not even interested really, because when this whole thing went down, some people were saying, "Hey man, they should apologize to you," and the other three people, apologize or just make a public statement and take it back and just. Fuck all that. I'm not interested in that, right? I don't want an apology. It happened. I've been getting over it for 4 years. So I just want to move on and eventually leave, right? Polk County. Obviously, I don't want to live here anymore, because of what went down. I have no trust for the law, and I'm, by the way, let me just stop and say, I'm not a victim. I'm not trying to portray myself as a victim. I wasn't raised like that. It just doesn't work like that for me. So, but my conviction is to tell this story, because it wasn't just me. It was three older people that were, I feel, abused by the police. And I don't want to live in a place like that. So, my aim is just to dip out. I'll go somewhere else and they do their thing here. If they want to keep electing stuff like that or whatever, that's up to them. That's up to the people of the county.
So let me ask you this. You talk about the old people. Were they working with you, or did they have their own stands at the place too?
So they had their own stands. It was actually 4 separate stands that, were investigated and were targeted. So my stand, which was essentially, it was all Fire Sticks. Once I switched over from those computers, I just sold Amazon Fire Sticks, resold them. The other 3 stands were people who actually sustained themselves by having a flea market booth. Like one lady who sold cups, like custom cups, and then she sold fire sticks allegedly. Another lady that was like in her, she's in her 70s, if I'm not mistaken. She may be in her 80s. I don't want to misquote it, but she's she's a senior citizen. She was selling candles and fire sticks according to the law. And then another guy that's 90 now, and he was selling antennas, like, those antennas to get the free channels, like local stuff that you're supposed to get by law. And then also fire sticks, according to them. So, I mean, these were people that depend on, the income from the flea market. I was there to try to make extra money to pay bills, but I had a 9 to 5. This was these people's bread and butter. So, this is one of the main reasons why I'm not going to shut up about this. And it's not about Grady Judd. This involves a lot more than that. I'm done talking about Grady Judd or whatever. That's up to them what they want to do. But I feel like I have an obligation to speak up for them, because you're not going to hear from them. You're not going to hear from the older people. They're not going to get on a podcast and talk about this thing. They're not going to write a book. They're not going to tell their story. They just want to live their life, and they're, in their twilight years, and they still have to work. These people, how hot it is in Florida. They're freaking out there, sweating balls out there, and fucking Florida is fucking hot and muggy and humid, and they're out there hustling. So these ain't people that are sitting around cashing checks from whatever, so that's why. That's what burns. This is what burns in me when I talk about this thing.
Let me ask you this, right? I want to ask you this. So when they do arrest you, it seems like you're angry. You felt like, hey man, what you charged me with is bullshit. I really wasn't doing nothing. But when they arrest you, I mean, are they nasty to you? Do they take you into interrogation? Some people haven't never been arrested. Some people have never been interrogated that are on here. What was it like when they arrest you? They just put you in jail, or are they on your ass?
So when they came in with the search warrants, right? It was Saturday. They early in the morning they rushed in. So I always got to the flea market before the sun came up. Pretty much all the vendors that were actually about their business did that. You come in, you set up. So probably 8 in the morning, once the sun's up, one customer comes in, and it's one of the police. I didn't know at the time, but he's pretending he's a regular person. He asked me about the fire stick. Hey, do you have another one of those fire sticks? My wife bought one, or something like that. And then he leaves. Another lady comes in that was an actual customer asking me to fix her Roku device. She comes in, I'm fixing her Roku device, and probably 3 minutes later, here comes 6 dudes, rushing in, search warrants, the whole thing. So once they asked me to come out of the booth and the whole thing like that, eventually they asked, like, hey, you need to talk to me. Do you want to talk to me about what took place? And like an asshole, I said yes, which I shouldn't, obviously never done. But I also write about that in the book, so people know it doesn't matter if you feel you're 100% innocent, you can prove it. Here's the paperwork. Fuck that. Never talk to the police, because they're never got your best interest at heart. So no, but they weren't nasty about it. I mean, they came in aggressively. And had me come out of the booth. Hey, you gonna be cool? You gonna be cool, man? Like, I'm gonna jump the booth and start throwing shit. So that was a little stupid. But I mean, besides that, I said yes. We went back to a car to talk, whatever, recorded, a 1990s type of cassette player that I guess detectives use. And, hey, I'm here with Luis Vasquez. We're blah, blah, blah. So they weren't really nasty or nothing like that. I mean, they were pretty normal dudes. And after I spoke to this guy, so I went back and forth with him. I'm like, yo, this is not illegal, man. This is wrong. Whatever you guys are doing, you were told wrong. No, you were doing something illegal, but it's robbery, theft, and related crimes, which is a Florida state statute. You're looking at 5 years in prison. It's a felony 3, and the whole thing like that. And I'm going back and forth. You're wrong. What do you mean it's, blah, blah. So we go back and forth for like 5 minutes in the car. And then I end the conversation. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And they call the transport cop over. They take me to jail. However, when the transport cop got there, that dude, very apologetic. Like, I have been arrested in my past. I'm in my 30s now, later 30s. But in my 20s, I was arrested several times for a little bullshit, driving on suspended license, things like that. So, you get arrested when you put your hands behind your back and you get ready to get handcuffs, right? This dude, I go to put my hands behind my back, and he's like, no, man, you're good. I'll do it from the front, man. You're good. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, never seen that. That's great. That's great. It's not gonna fuck up my wrist. So I mean that, and then when we get transported to jail, I'm in the back seat with the old Asian guy that's 90 that also got arrested with me or whatever. We get taken to the jail, and then before they let us out of the car, one cop says to another cop who's got the ladies in the car, he's like, "Hey man, it's a sad day to be a cop, huh?" So I mean, these guys were the regular dudes, you know. These guys were like, "Yo, what the hell is this? Like, why are we doing this?" You know, that's just my opinion. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm thinking that they're thinking. So I
Did
mean,
they felt bad? Do you think they felt bad they had a 90-year-old
oh
jail
yeah,
cuff?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, me, I look like just a regular dude, whatever. Who gives a fuck? You know, which is fine. I would think the same thing. You know, all right, you'll be all right, bro. You're going to jail, so what? You know, but these people, there's two elderly people in there, and a lady that's middle age, that could be like your mom's age, you know, this kind of thing, like 60 or whatever. So I absolutely, it sounded to me like they felt bad, and they showed it. They weren't, they didn't hide it. So, I appreciate that. I still remember this like it was yesterday. It's been 4 years. So yeah, they were fair. They were fair for the most part. I mean, the only unfair, weird bullshit, came later when the press conference was announced. But for the arresting dudes, they weren't too crazy.
Let's talk about that. So you end up seeing this press conference. How do you feel when you see that? You feel like, damn, this dude's calling me a thief, and you're like you said, you're in YouTube, famous, whatever. I mean, how does it affect you? Because you got kids, right?
Yeah. I got two boys. They were at the time they were 5 and 3. So it so the way I found out about the press conference is I get out of jail. I was only in jail 24 hours maybe before my wife came and posted the bond. I get out of jail that next day, which was a Monday. I'm outside looking for lawyers. They took my cell phone, which they weren't supposed to take. It was a mistake or whatever. It wasn't on the search warrant. So I couldn't call. I couldn't search for a lawyer. I took my wife's phone. I go out to the back. I'm looking for a lawyer. I'm searching Google and the whole thing. So I get a text. Hey man, Lewis, you're on TV, but to my wife's phone. And it's a female coworker of mine at the job I was at the time. And sure enough, the next text, there's a picture of the cameras, microphones, and this kind of shit. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what this is. This is a police press conference. So that's kind of how I found out about it. Once that happened, I ran back inside the house, turned off like TVs, unplugged the Wi-Fi, because I didn't want my wife to see that, right? Because she didn't know that was happening at that time. And my kids, they're still pretty young, but the 5-year-old sure could have stumbled upon it. So I just unplugged everything and tried to shield them from what was happening, what was being said on TV, because it was excessive. What was said was excessive. It wasn't, hey, we found these things and we did this investigation and yeah, these people are being charged with. It was way more excessive than that. So, it hurts for you to see I'm thinking about my wife, to think of her loved one being, lambasted like that. Even if you are guilty, you still got to get a fair trial. So yeah, man, it wasn't easy. It definitely was. Those first the couple months until it got dismissed, it was not easy, man.
Let me ask you this, right? Normal law-abiding citizens, people that really never been in trouble, people like the Asian dude that's 90, they've never been to jail before, right?
No.
So people that are watching this show might have never been to jail. But let me say this. County jails can be very dangerous, extremely filthy. That Polk County jail, I'm sure, is extremely dangerous to be there. What was it like? What is it like for a guy that's really never been in prison or anything to go to a county jail? I mean, are you in a cell alone? Are you in a cell with 20 other people? Are there, people overdose, people going through withdrawal? I mean, I've been in cells in the county jail where dudes are going through withdrawal from heroin, puking, laying on the floor next to the toilet. What is it like there in Florida?
So you called it, man. It definitely, Polk County Jail is not a playground, that's for sure. And it's famous for that, right? It's a supposedly a federal system that was turned into a county jail. But yeah, anyways, that's what you got in there. You got withdrawing all over the place. You got meth heads. You got Tucci, right? You got K2. You got everything is in there. And for me, it was no problem, right? Like I'm a fit dude. I work out. I'm not going for the bullshit, right? I'm not going to go in there and be victimized by anybody or anything like that. But my concern was, yeah, like you said, with these older people, you're going to put a 90-year-old lady in there and, what if somebody attacks her? or the old Asian dude. Like, what's even in the holding cell before you get put in the cell, you're getting processed and all that. Somebody can attack you there. It's fucking, you don't know who's in for what. So yeah, county jails can be very dangerous. You don't know what you're gonna get. So yeah, I was concerned for them. I didn't even know them before this happened. I just knew of them, but my concern was for them because I got out. I hear that the most elderly lady, she didn't get out for multiple days. And if I'm not mistaken, from what I heard from another vendor at the flea market, she was there through Christmas. Like, we got arrested on the 19th. I think she was there the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 25th to like the 26th is what I heard. I can't confirm that, but yeah. So my concern was for them being in a freaking county jail. What happens if they get attacked, if they get hurt, if they get smacked around, for fucking fire sticks, bro. Come on, bro.
I know you said that you were, you're physically fit and all of that, right? But when you're in that holding cell, how many people are in the cell with you?
So the holding cell, probably 10, 15. And, that's the concrete benches. That's the one toilet for everybody. And that's, you're waiting for your pick. You're waiting to get called up to get your pictures. In our cases, since we were being charged as felons, we're getting our pictures, we're getting our felony swabs and the whole thing. So I guess it was longer, but it takes about 10 hours at least here to get from there to actually get into a cell or a bunk or whatever. And there's quite a few people in each holding cell, definitely packed.
One of the most miserable places you've probably ever been in your life is at Polk County Jail and that holding cell, right?
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Any type of violence while you're there for that 24 hours? You see people fighting in there, arguing?
There was definitely arguing. I don't remember seeing, I was not there long enough to see fighting and all that, but there was definitely arguing. There was freaking withdrawing. There was begging for K2. There was, just a lot of weird shit, but I just wasn't there long enough to see any violence. I had, like, in my 20s, I was arrested at one point, and I did, like a month. And at that point, I did see a lot of, and I was here in Polk County way back in the day. And I did see that then, but this time it was, I'm an adult, full-grown adult in my 30s at this point. So I was in and out. My wife got me out and didn't even have enough time to see the bullshit.
Some people think county jails are, that's just jail. That ain't prison. Some of the most dangerous places I've been in, I did 20 years, right, have been in county jails. Where you see that shit where people are like, oh, get up. I've seen people take people's food. And, it is a place where if you end up in where I'm from, if you end up in that county jail, only the strong survive, bro. You know what I'm saying? And you know what? Not on no racial shit, but for white dudes, you get on that minor floor, anybody that, that's watching from Rochester, they can tell you. You get on that minor floor and they call them pits. There's 13 people in there. And you walk in that pit, you're only the white dude. They're young kids back then. It's like you guys call in Florida JIT camps or whatever, right? I mean, these dudes are pounding the shit out of you. And I was involved in some shit where I had the whole pit jump me when I was like 17, 16. Damn. So county jails are definitely dangerous places where you could lose your life in a county jail. You agree?
100%. 100%. And I'm sure it happens every day across the country. I mean, because I've never been to prison, but it sounds to me, especially in the research I've done for my book too, where I talk about the Innocence Project and what they've been doing too. And it seems to me that the county jail is more dangerous, or can be more unpredictable than prison, because you don't know who you're getting. You don't know what these dudes are coming off of and what the hell is going on. You just don't know. So yeah, I completely agree.
Definitely some dangerous places. You said you were physically fit. You're obviously pissed off at Grady when you get arrested. You're angry inside. But is there a part of you that's going to that, county jail and you're like, damn, man, like a little bit nervous?
Yeah, no, most definitely. Yeah. I mean, because I didn't know how long I was going to be there. I know I'm getting hit with a felony, for the first time ever. So I don't know what's going to happen, if I'm going to get, if it's going to be a $10,000 bond and I ain't getting out, that kind of thing. I didn't know what was going to happen. So for sure, I was nervous. I was prepared, because when I was in there right away, hey man, what you doing here? That's the kind of stuff starts. And I damn sure wasn't going to say, oh, well, I'm in here for reselling Amazon Fire Sticks at the flea market. This kind of, so I'm like, I can see where problems could come from that big time. So yeah, I was definitely nervous.
I'm gonna be like, man, you done sold my mama that broken ass fire stick at that motherfucking flea market. Boy, I'm finna whip your ass up in there.
It should have been protection, if anything. Like, hey, bro, man, you allowed my mom to cut that $350 Spectrum bill. Watch her novelas and her local TV or whatever, bro. I got you. What you need? You need soups? You need cookies? I got you, bro. I think that's what hopefully it would have been.
12 Quarter Zone's still on in 2020, or did they cut that off?
What's that?
On the Spanish channel, the 12 Quarter Zone's the show, the dating show. You ever watch that?
I think my wife has. I think my wife has, and I'm pretty sure it's still on. The Spanish novela thing is a whole niche within itself. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's still on.
12 Quarter Zones was a big hit when I was in federal prison. Everybody be locked in on a Spanish TV when that show came on. But anyway, I know, so obviously, you're facing 5 years. It's been 4 years ago. You didn't get 5 years. Tell the people what happened. What's the disposition?
The disposition. So what ended up happening is that I got a lawyer. I ended up borrowing some money, about $2,500 to get a private lawyer. I damn sure wasn't going to get a public defender and get sent right up the river or up the road, however it's said, right? So I got a lawyer. It took about probably, I want to say, a month or so in conversations and all that to get to where I got. But at first, they offered like a waiver due. So if I'm facing a felony 3, right, 5 years or whatever, it's the lowest felony. But the offer right away was like a misdemeanor. Like, hey, man, just take this misdemeanor. No jail time. If I remember this correctly, no jail time. I want to say it was some probation or some community service or something like that. That's what the offer was, maybe a couple weeks into, waiting to see what the hell was going to happen. I told the lawyer, not interested in that. Like, I'm not going to take a conviction, I can't afford to go to trial, but I'm not just going to take whatever's coming my way, because I also have a job. If I take even a misdemeanor, I'm fired. And I was there 7, maybe 8 years at that point. So I say no, they reject the offer or whatever. They come back later, a couple weeks later, and say, all right, listen, here's the deal. If you're willing to pay for the investigative cost that it costs for us to, I guess, come look at you for 3 months and this kind of thing, then we will give you a pretrial diversion, pretty much. Like, we'll dismiss the charge completely. Noli prosecute, right? NOLE, no prosecution, and then do that. And I want to say it was do some community service. However, I just paid it out because there was an option to buy out the community service for maybe $200 or something like that. I just paid that out to, like, I'm done. Like, here, take that. So I borrowed the money to do that, paid that off, and the charge was dismissed. And if I could just say this, that here's one of the craziest parts about this whole thing. So have you ever heard about a cocaine dealer or somebody selling X pills or opiates or booze and all this extra shit, right? Percocet. You get busted with, let's say, 30 Percocets. They just said I had like 30 fire sticks that day or whatever, right? You beat the case on some sort of a technicality or whatever. When you beat the case, do they give you back your Percocets and cocaine and weed? Has anybody ever gotten their drugs back?
Of course not.
Of course not. Yeah, I get my case dismissed. I get a call. Hey, bro, come get your 30 or whatever fire sticks. Come get your TV that we took. Come get your paperwork that says, how to set up the fire stick. I got all my stuff back.
So you're back at the flea market then, right?
Hell no, man. Shit. No. So, no, I just took it home. I'm like, all right, I'm going to take it home then. I'm going to take it home. I took a picture of it, saw this property and evidence. It was probably 6 or 7 bags. Property and evidence. Took a picture, stuffed it up in my closet back there somewhere, and just left it there, man. I'm like, one day, I'm going to tell this story, once I get over this or whatever. And I figured it would go away. It didn't. So I'm like, all right. As of maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I'm like, I'm going to tell the story now. I have all my stuff still, whatever. But no, I definitely didn't go back and set up a booth and get back on camera and all that. No, thanks.
Let me ask you this, right? Because this is the question a lot of people are going to want to know. I know you paid the $200 community. You can buy out a community service. Never knew that, and I do legal work. I don't think you can do that in New York. If you give you community service, there's a reason. But the cost of the investigation you had to pay, how much was that?
So that totaled, I want to say, to the best of my recollection, it was maybe $400, maybe $400 or something like that for the hours spent on detectives. It was multiple detectives, multiple buys or whatever. So yeah, several $100s.
So they pretty much realize this is a bullshit case. They even give you back your fire sticks. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know earlier you said, something about Spectrum, like you wanted to kind of go in on Spectrum. So what do you got to say about Spectrum?
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to tell my side of this story, which I have never said before, and which is like this wasn't, like I said, it's not a Grady Judd story. Grady Judd gets a lot of media, a lot of press. He does his thing. I can't compete. I can't compete on social media. None of that, and I ain't interested either. So I think Grady Judd was probably tricked by whoever it was that claimed that this was, a big illegal franchise or whatever. So in my discovery, as I got my discovery back probably a day before getting the pre-trial, making that. So I made the deal. I made the pre-trial deal, whatever. Here, I'll pay you. It's over. Then I get my discovery. So I had to ask my lawyer, hey, is there a discovery? Like, I want to know whatever. So they never sent it to me. I requested it. I got it. As I'm going through my discovery, I'm looking to see who was they claimed that there was a concerned citizen, as they called him or her in the conference, that was at the flea market, and after the flea market one day and seeing that I was giving people access to free TV or free local TV and this kind of thing, that
How
they're
dare you
in.
do such a thing, you son of a...
So maybe he had stock in Spectrum or whatever. I don't know. But this dude supposedly started bucking right to the precinct or whatever, the police office. Hey, and this was what was said in the conference. So I'm not making it up. I'm paraphrasing when I say this part. But he's like, hey, it goes into the police area, whatever they're building. Hey, can I talk to somebody? And, the guys at the flea market, I think they're doing something wrong. And then the police were like, well, what do you mean something wrong? And he goes, well, they're giving free TV that I'm having to pay for. Something's got to be wrong with that. And boom, that's what supposedly launched the investigation. So that never made sense to me, right? I'm looking at my discovery and I'm looking to see who is the accuser, right? That's part of your constitutional rights. You're allowed to see who's making accusations against you, who the witnesses
Crawford
are.
versus Washington, yeah.
Exactly right. So this is part of our constitutional rights. Yet there's no name. There's no, hey, this guy, whatever. So there's no a concerned citizen. But what was in there was that at some point, which was right before the arrest, I got arrested maybe December 19th, 2020. I want to say they talked to this dude maybe December 15th, 2020. So 4 days before, something like that, very shortly before. They talked to a guy who is probably still a director of Spectrum Charter Communications. So like I said earlier, this is a $1 billion conglomerate, Spectrum Charter. Somehow this guy comes in, or maybe he does it over the phone, whatever thing they had going on there. He makes a recorded statement about this flea market case in Polk County, Florida. He goes, oh yeah, well, this is communications. These people don't have deals with us, or something like that. Super vague. So when I saw that I can't even explain right, how your blood boils when you see that, because you're thinking this, like, oh, all right, these people are just country, bro. I mean, it is the country. They thought the fire sticks were some kind of hackle stick, a hacking device or whatever, but this was bigger than that, because Spectrum, I mean, these people are $1 billion entities. They got to know that fire sticks are not fucking hacking devices. They're not even fucking locked. They're unlocked. Right? They're not made to be jailbroken. You can't jailbreak it. So anyways, I saw that. And when I start getting into writing this book just a couple years ago, I'm like, how is this possible? I start researching Spectrum and I find so much other stuff, garbage that they were involved in throughout the years and that they're still involved in. And so many other lawsuits. They just had the biggest civil lawsuit of all time, where one of their associates, one of the guys that installs your cable in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, in DFW, Dallas Fort Worth, Texas, this guy goes to install this lady's cable. Instead of installing the cable, he murders her, right, on the job, or he was off that day or whatever, but he had access to the van. Anyways, the family in turn sues Spectrum to find out why this guy was on the job or whatever. It comes to find out Spectrum was aware that this guy was crazy as hell. This guy, he came to them, his supervisors. Hey, he told them one time he thought he was an NFL player that got injured. He won a Super Bowl. I mean, just wild shit. This guy was telling them he was crazy. He was broke. He was going, his marriage was falling apart, all this wild shit. And how they reacted to that, they're like, okay, man, I'm paraphrasing. But yeah, you got another 25 customers, to get to work, bro. So he goes out and continues working. And then this thing happens. So, and by the way, when the family sued Spectrum for this, Spectrum forged documentation saying that this lady signed an arbitration agreement, meaning that if you're raped and murdered or whatever happens to you by an associate of theirs, well, it's okay. You'll get an arbitration. I think it's a couple $100. You sign your life away essentially with these agreements with Spectrum, and I don't know if it's other cable companies, but they forged it and they got caught by the jury. They got sued and they lost for $7 billion. They had to pay this family. This just happened, and for some reason, it's nowhere. You can't find it on the news. Where is it at? Right. So I only found it because this Spectrum was involved in my case. So I dug a bunch of stuff into Spectrum and found just some wild stuff that I write about in my book. I write about that story. I write about practices that they do, specifically what seems like to poor people and people in trailer parks and stuff like that, where you're forced to pay cable along with your rent as no choice. I experienced this when I was in an apartment in 2019. When I went to go re-sign the lease, hey man, the cable's part of your lease now. I'm like, what I don't watch cable, bro. But I got like babies at home. I know tech. I'm a self-taught kind of tech guy. What am I gonna need cable for? It's just part of the rent now, man. So it turns out that's called bulk billing, and that's a practice. Spectrum didn't invent it, but they turned it into what I would call like a strong arm tactic, where it's happening all across the nation. I talk about in my book stories in New York. There's one in New York, retirement community, nursing homes, Texas, Florida. That one happened to me here in Florida. So there's just so much wild stuff, since what happened to me, and I'm researching them. They're just involved in a lot of wild stuff. I don't know if maybe Frontier and these other people, Dish Network, are they doing this kind of shit? I don't know, but I specifically researched Spectrum because they felt they needed to come down and squash 3 old people in a flea market and a dude flipping, making $30 a fire stick or whatever. So I think I had the rights to do that.
Pretty much. I mean, from you digging up this stuff, Spectrum don't give a shit about no one.
I would say, in my opinion, Spectrum don't give a shit about no one, and it seems like it affects mostly underprivileged people, poor people, trailer parks, apartment complexes, and people that can't speak up for themselves, people that don't have the avenue to speak, and it seems to me that they only do something to fix it once the news comes, right? If you Google it on the news, you'll see the stories. They're there. And the problem seems to me, in my opinion, to only get fixed once the news gets there and starts making a stink about it. Other than that, it's like, hey, go fuck yourself. That's what it seems like to me. And by the way, you live in New York, right? They almost got evicted from the entire state of New York just some years back. I want to say it was 2018. New York pretty much banned them. And somehow they last second were allowed to stay in New York because they were doing some kind of fraud, offering all this 100 megabytes of internet or whatever and only giving you very little. So, I mean, I've never heard of any conglomerate doing this kind of stuff. I've never seen it, but maybe somebody could prove me wrong.
So show people the cover of your book and tell them how they can find it, brother.
Yeah. So so my website is tech. So it's tech-pirate.com, tech, tech-pirate.com. And you can find my book there. I have my ebook there. I have an audio book just now available, also on my website. They're super cheap. I have them also on Amazon and everywhere else, Barnes & Noble and the whole thing. If you're an Apple person or that kind of thing, those are available there too. But on my website specifically, they're much less price than on these other places. So when I wrote my book, I didn't give my rights to Amazon or Audible, this kind of thing. I'm using a company called Book Funnel for the audiobook. I eventually will get it on the Audible, but I don't love the practices sometimes they have with self-published authors where, you don't have as much control over your own ISBN, your own rights. And, as a self-published author, that's super important, and you have kids too, you eventually want to pass those royalties, if any royalties come at all, to your children and this kind of thing. And I just don't love the idea of Amazon having all that. So I just self-published it myself, created my own publishing company, and put it up on my website. So that's where it's everything is easily available there. Super user-friendly website. And yeah, they could also reach me on the social medias too if they have any questions about the case or any questions about what took place. It's also my socials are Tech Pirate One on Instagram, TikTok, and everywhere else. So Tech Pirate One.
You send me your links, and as long as you send them, I'll put them in the description so people can check out your book, check you out on social media. Definitely appreciate you coming on the show, talking about talking about old Grady, right? Because, he does some bullshit. But the bigger story is, hey, it's a little bit true crime, right? It doesn't always have to be, hey, people getting killed and getting robbed. But
most definitely.
Some of the biggest criminals around might even be old Spectrum, huh?
That's what I'm saying. It might not have a lot of blood and all that kind of thing in it, but I think it affects a lot of us. I think the constitutional right violations that took place, in my opinion, to me and the other people should read about that, because you should never talk to the police, that kind of thing. Like, I wish I knew that back then, and I would have easily beat the case. I would have then sued afterward and got a couple $100K, I'm sure, so it's just information that should be more readily available. And that's what I put in the book, along with my own personal, journey to get to this point.
So before we go, one last question, right? People want to know, hey, you're no longer at the flea market. What are you doing with your life now, brother?
Yeah, so I work. I've been working in logistics for years now. Over a decade. So I still work in logistics. Besides that, now that I've got this, my product out, my story out there, my plan is to talk about this more, to get onto other platforms, and also talk to people about the Constitution. Like, if I can get in and talk in front of people about constitutional violations, about right to repair, right to own, which has everything to do with jailbreaking. You have the right to do whatever you want with the shit you buy. You paid for it. You live in the United States, not in, in Russia or whatever. You have the right to do that. And just talk about these kind of things. That would be, the best case scenario for me. But, other than that, I continue working, feeding my family, trying the best to provide, and not giving up.
That's what's up. Listen, man, definitely appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. Your links will be in the description. People can check you out. I'm telling you, man, go check out this brother's book. I mean, it's a crazy ass story, man, and kind of crazy what Spectrum does to people. And when you really dig into it and you look at some of the lawsuits, you're going to be like, wow. But this brother, reveals some of that stuff. But anyway, appreciate you coming on. Anything you want to say before we go?
Nah, man, just that everybody stay safe, man. Have a great Halloween. Everybody, just try to enjoy your kids, man. You never know when's the last time, you do anything. So enjoy your kids, enjoy your wife, enjoy your family, and, just be safe.
Definitely appreciate you coming on. If you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. With respect, Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, we're out.